Hello world! There will be two parts to this video. The first part will teach the basics of downloading and referencing a file downloaded from the Google Fonts website. This is recommended for beginners. The second part will be for those who understand self-hosting fonts and want to learn how to quickly and easily support legacy and modern browsers using the Google Webfonts Helper. Timestamps available in the description below. Now, let's begin. If you'd like to follow along, be sure to have a basic HTML and CSS website available to you. If you're new to web development, be sure to check out my web development series where we learn how to create the website we see now. Let's see how self-hosting works with Google Fonts. This website previously utilized the Google Fonts API, which has been removed for the purposes of this tutorial. To start us off, let's go to the Google Fonts webpage. Search for the font you prefer. Mine is called Jura. Select it, then click Download Family. This will download a zip file to your computer. I'm now going to open the My New Website folder in the File Explorer. If you have Visual Studio Code, simply right-click on the File tab and click Reveal in File Explorer. Let me just drag the Explorer across so you can see. There! Now, let's create a new folder in My New Website and call it Fonts. Now locate the zip file you just downloaded, drag and drop it into your new Fonts folder. Now let's open the Fonts folder and extract the contents of the zip file. Our aim is to ensure all the font files located in the static folder are in our font folder. Simply locate your TFF files in the static folder of your unzipped folder, cut with Ctrl+X, return to your Fonts folder, and paste the files. Please ensure that you remove any other folder or file that might still be in the Fonts folder. As I used 7-zip to extract my files here, the process may be a little different from yours, but just remember, you're aiming to have all TTF files to be in the font folder only, like this. And here they are in Visual Studio Code. To use them, we are going to add a font family to our My CSS file. At the top of the file, enter @font-face, open curly bracket, which will automatically add a closing bracket for Visual Studio Code. Inside the brackets, enter font-family, single quotation marks, and type the name of the font that you just downloaded. In my case, it's called Jura. Then end the line with a semicolon. On the next line, type font-style, normal, and semicolon. You can add styles like bold and italics here, but in most cases, specifying normal is fine here. On a new line, type font-weight, 400, semicolon. Font weight of 400 is a default font weight typically representing regular. Finally, let's add the location of the font file on a new line. Type src, URL, open close round brackets, and 2 single quotation marks inside them. Let me teach you a little bit about directory navigation. If we put a dot and / in the 2 single quotation marks, Visual Studio will show that the My CSS file is the only file available for us to reference. The reason being is that the / means we are looking in the current directory. Seeing as we are modifying the my.css file, we are currently in the CSS directory. In order to point to our fonts file, we will need to move up one directory, which in my case is to My New Website. From there, we can enter the font directory, so we can access the font file. In order to do this, type the following: /fonts. As you can see, Visual Studio Code has now found the font files we're after. Select or enter the regular .ttf file. To finish this off, end with a semicolon. Now that we have our font, let's add our font family to the body of our HTML. I'll remove the comments for the one I prepared earlier. But if you don't have it yourself, type font-family, and in single quotation marks, type the name of your new font family. In the event that the font can't be found, it's best practice to list a default font family. I specified mine as sans serif. Now, let's save, open our web page, and refresh it. There, as you can see, my custom font Jira is now being applied to my web page. You may be thinking the heading fonts would look better if they were bold. How would I utilize bold fonts? It just so happens that as part of our original download, we did get a bold font. Let me show you how to implement this now. Let's start by copying and pasting the font face we wrote already underneath the first one. As you may have seen when looking at Google Fonts, bold has a weight of 700, so let's change 400 to 700. The last change we will need to make is the name of the font file from regular to bold. In my case, it is Jira-bold. As you can see in my H1 styling, I have already specified a font weight of 700. Please make sure you also add the bold font weight to your styling in order to use it. Once done, let's save and reload our web page. Ta-da! And there is our bold font. Great job, everyone! You now know what's required to host your own fonts without using the Google Fonts API. Now you have learnt the basics, let me tell you briefly about font file types. You may have noticed when we downloaded the font family from Google Fonts, we only received TTF files, also known as True Type font. The disadvantage of this is that the file type is fairly old, created in the 1980s. While it will most likely work on most browsers, there may be a chance it won't look as good as expected between browsers, or modern browsers may one day end support for TTF files. So, it would be best to host more modern file types like the Web Open Font format, such as WOFF and WOFF2. And if your intention is to also support legacy browsers like IE8 and lower, you will need embedded open type files, also known as EOT. The best place to source different font types to support multiple browsers is through the Google Webfonts Helper. If you've been following from the start of this video, let's comment out or remove the font faces we added, the font family for good measure, and save. Now, let's refresh the page to restore the default web font. Good. Now let's go to Google Webfonts Helper. You can either Google it or use the link in the description below. At the top left-hand corner, start typing the name of your desired font. Mine is called Jira. And there it is. Now, we can select which font weights we want. By default, we will need regular, which is 400. For this tutorial, I will select 700 in addition. If we scroll down, we can see what makes Google Webfonts Helper so great. Currently, we have Best Support selected, which covers IE, old mobile browsers, modern browsers, and super modern browsers. While I'll be using the support for modern browsers in this tutorial, you can use the same process for the Best Support option. Let's now scroll to the bottom and download the zip file. Once done, let's go back to Visual Studio Code and open the directory in the File Explorer if you don't have it open already. Open the Fonts folder and drag our downloaded zip file into it. Unzip the folder and make sure all the file's contents is placed into the Fonts folder, just like mine. Then get rid of everything else. Now, this is where the Google Webfonts Helper comes in real handy. Instead of typing out the font face, let's go back to the Webfonts Helper website. Copy all the CSS code presented to you and paste it into your CSS file. It's as simple as that. Just make sure your paths to the fonts are correct. If they are not, you can either update them manually yourself or provide the correct path in the Webfonts Helper. If you had existing font files like I do, you can add them by copying the URL from the path in the brackets, changing the semicolon to a comma on the last file, and pasting the path underneath. As we are now dealing with multiple font types, it is best to add the format, which is True Type in my case. Don't forget to end your last line with a semicolon. You can rinse and repeat the process for each font weight you have. Now, to utilize your fonts, add the font family to your selector, like I've done previously for the body, and make sure the font weights you want are in other areas. Otherwise, the default will be 400. Now let's save, return to our webpage, and refresh the page. And there you have it! You now know how to host your own Google Fonts instead of calling them through the Google Fonts API. Congratulations! If you found this video helpful, be sure to give it a like. And if you're curious about web development or software development in general, please consider subscribing to this channel for future tutorials and insights. Until then, this is Micro, logging out.